had these sort of building moments, but I think that was the sort of real moment where I was like, oh, I need to figure out who I am and what I want and what works well for me, and not just work these hours or do these things because that's the norm here, because I'm sick because of the way I'm being. So find something that works for you. And just because someone else can work that hard doesn't mean you can, or just because someone else can drink every weekend doesn't mean you should, or like everyone has different norms. And so I think that was when I like really, really took a step back and like started evaluating things differently.
Welcome to Outside the Bell Curve, a show for those who just can't seem to color inside the lines. I'm Heather, and I talk to friends with cool jobs, wild stories, and a habit of choosing the unexpected. From creative freelancers to digital nomads and anything and everything in between, this is a space for redefining success on your own terms. So let's explore what it looks like to live outside the bell curve.
So today we are sitting down with Binx. She is an incredible feminist. She is loud and outspoken in all of the best ways. She knows her shit. She grew up abroad. She is very politically motivated. She's viral on TikTok. Check her out. Really fun. And she's always here to educate us about challenging societal norms, bringing up the matriarchy, and helping a sister out. So this is Binx.
Hi.
So Binx, tell us first what you think living outside the bell curve means to you.
I was so excited when you asked me to be on your show and when you told me about the concept of the show, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I could talk about this all day. I think maybe every generation will say this about themselves, but I do really feel like millennials were one of the first generation where we got into the workforce and we were like, no, I don't want to do that whole 9-to-5 thing. And it was really normal for us, our peers, whoever, like everyone knows someone who is a digital nomad. That was such a thing in our generation. So I think as a millennial, that's what I really think of when being out of the bell curve, is just sort of like blazing your own trail, or maybe not even blazing your own trail, but maybe taking the like less walked path, but the path that's right for you.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess for you, I feel like even just your upbringing was a little bit outside of the norm. You grew up internationally. So tell us about that and how that's kind of shaped who you are at the current moment.
Definitely. So my parents were diplomats. So I was born outside of the U.S. and grew up outside of the U.S. until I came here for college. And we moved every 3 to 5 years, sort of army brat, but with diplomats, not military. And I think if anyone who's traveled, whether it was like me just from a young age or as an adult, I think we can all really agree that traveling really opens up your mind. And I think for me, I bounced around from like places in Africa to the Caribbean to the Middle East. So I lived in a lot of different cultures. So I think from a young age, it was very apparent to me how much just because something's a norm here doesn't mean it's a norm there. It's all sort of a construct and it's a part of culture. So I think that's always just sort of been like in the background of my life. And then when I like had a fully formed brain and was making decisions, it kind of came to the forefront of how I think and how I make decisions.
Would you say growing up that way is what drove you to work in nonprofits? And what did you do in the nonprofit sector?
That's a good question. I think so. Because my mom worked for USAID, which is sort of a buzzword now, like a politically charged word now. It wasn't when I was growing up. We always worked in the they worked, and I lived in the developing world. And so I think for me, I was really like, I want to, come back to these places and like Habitat for Humanity and this and that. And then as I went to college and started learning about different structures, I learned about white saviorism, and they were like, don't do that. Like the people in Africa can build shit themselves. Like they don't need you there. And so that was my plan and my path. And then when I learned about how that can not always be helpful, I was like, what can I do in my community? And after college, I wanted to be a human rights lawyer. So I got my master's in humanitarian law, international human rights law, but was quickly like, no, no thanks, not going to be a lawyer. But I was still like, okay, something human rights, something helping stuff out. And I was back in Arizona, where my family's originally from, and started working at a nonprofit there that was working to curb homelessness and like help specifically homeless families like get out of homelessness permanently. And that was like my first real job. I had internships or like gigs or like side job kind of things before, but that was my first real 9-to-5 job. And I entered into that sort of realm through like social media marketing and all of that. And that sort of is kind of where my path began, and kind of stayed in that similar vein throughout my career, even though it took a lot of different shapes.
Yeah. Which I definitely, you mentioned that that was your first 9 to 5. And before that, you kind of jumped around. So with your career and platform, you've built it to challenge societal norms. Was that ever intentional, or was there like a distinct point in your life? I mean, you obviously grew up seeing the way society is in different places. Was there a distinct moment that you were like, nope, this isn't for me? Yes, we need to challenge systems. What was that moment for you?
I think it was an amalgamation of my life. Definitely the way I grew up was like, again, sort of the background kind of informing me of this, not everything has to be how people say it is. And depending on where you are, it's like norms are different. But I am also neurodiverse. So I have ADHD. And so I was diagnosed not super late in life, but not until high school. So I spent like a lot of my younger years being misunderstood, I think. And so I think that also made me feel a little bit more willing to not be in the norm, because I think when I would try to do things like the neurotypical way, it just didn't fit right. And then I was feeling really wrong for it. And then once I learned about that I had ADHD and learned all about it, especially as an adult, I thought it was just like, I struggle to focus, but it's a lot more. It's like how you process emotions, so many other things. And I learned about that. And I think that sort of empowered me to be like, yeah, those times that you tried to fit in with the status quo or like do what you thought was good and make yourself that mold, it actually was a really bad fit and no regrets. I think doing my master's in law is a good example of that. At the time, I was like, okay, if I just do this and work hard and, that's how I'll find my path. And it wasn't a good fit for me. And I think that was me trying to like fit into a mold that wasn't right for me, which is fine because in your 20s, that's like a lot of what that's about, is like trying stuff on. Unfortunately, there are student loans. So some things you try on are more expensive than others. But I think that really helped. And then as I got older, in my later 20s, I developed an autoimmune condition. And I had it for a few years without knowing what it was and like going to doctors and like not really being able to figure it out. And then was able to like find solutions and get diagnosed by moving to Eastern medicine. Again, like not the norm. And I felt like my autoimmune condition really came from my role that I played in hustle culture and really, really trying to overwork and prove my worth by like what I had going on. And I think that was like, I had these sort of building moments, but I think that was the sort of real moment where I was like, oh, I need to figure out who I am and what I want and what works well for me, and not just work these hours or do these things because that's the norm here, because I'm sick because of the way I'm being. So find something that works for you. And just because someone else can work that hard doesn't mean you can, or just because someone else can drink every weekend doesn't mean you should, or like everyone has different norms. And so I think that was when I like really, really took a step back and like started evaluating things differently.
How was that shift for you? Did it feel like did it feel like a natural shift when you started, or was it like, did you feel like you were forcing yourself to kind of lean into what your body was asking for?
I definitely feel like it was a little bit of forcing myself, but also I had gotten so unwell that like my body forced me to that point too. I sort of met in the middle. But then once I started getting better, I would catch myself wanting to like jump back in and hustle and have to be like, check in with yourself. I think it's also a lot of unlearning like things that you were brought up with or social expectations or pressures. And that is also like a whole different journey of figuring out who you are, which can be really, really hard when like the world is always trying to tell you who you are. And so I think it was also having to do that every day, like what's going on today, how am I feeling today, and then the larger sort of like macro version of going to therapy or like journaling or really getting in touch with myself. Because I think by the time I had that sort of like aha moment, I had spent so much time trying to fit in or like trying to go under the radar or trying to, be what I thought society wanted me to be, that I was like, I don't even know who I am. I don't even know what I want. I don't even know what works for me. And so I kind of had to be okay with it. Was like I felt like a baby again. I had to be okay with like crawling and everyone else around me is running. And I had to be like, just because everyone knows how to run, you're crawling, you're a baby. You're just figuring out who you are. Yeah. So it's okay. And start from there and not just try to get up and run immediately, because then you're just going to go back to that old thing.
That's such a great way to put it, because I think all of us were like, you want to be great at the thing you try right away. Yeah. And it's so hard for you to like fail and figure it out. But it's like, no, you kind of have to like just crawl. Yeah. But I think we're in a society where it's, no, you must run, especially in America. You must run all the time.
All the time. And then don't complain when you're tired.
Yeah. It's like, it's neither a marathon nor a sprint. It's both of them at the same time.
Yeah. Totally.
Until you die.
Yeah.
Healthcare system. Okay. So I think with that, we should talk about what you're working on now. And I'm curious the amounts of questions you've gotten throughout your life of just doing things differently. So can you tell us about the creative venture that you're on now and your shift from the nonprofit sector?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like no shade to the nonprofit world, but I do think that is one of like the roles that is it's really easy to get burnt out there because it is just one of those careers that asks a lot of you. Like nurses, teachers, a lot of these like female dominated spaces, they don't really value with money. And then they're like, hey, you're passionate about it, so you should just work for a little money. And it's like that gets old really quick. So, and I think I also have always, maybe because of my neurodiversity or maybe just from all the other factors we talked about, like I always, whenever I've been in an office corporate setting, I've been like, I'm trying to like it, but I can't do this forever. Like I always kind of felt that way. And so while I was working at my last job, which was probably my favorite job I've ever had, like it was a really good nonprofit with a really good team. And like, I think especially because it was such a good job, the fact that I was like, I can't be here forever was also very like, even if you get the best version of this, you're never going to be like really, really happy and fulfilled here. Like there's something else you need to be doing. But so while I was at that job, I was posting on TikTok. I'd started posting a little bit before I got that job, like in the pandemic, and then continued to post while I had that job and then started blowing up. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is something that I could really turn into something. And I'm just having fun. And so because I wasn't really trying to leave my job anytime soon, I kept having fun with it and seeing where it would go or where it would resonate or where my voice sort of fit in on this sort of platform. And I felt like on Instagram, I always struggled with that platform and was really gelling with TikTok and the trends and like Gen Z. I love Gen Z. They're so much fun and they're always forward thinking and teaching me about myself and stuff. So I just really, really appreciated that platform and like found myself wanting to be on it and wanting to post and like, caught up in that culture of like, oh, this is what's trending now. And then this thing happened in my real life. And now I'm thinking about this trend. So it's like all very in the forefront. And I just kept posting on that and didn't really figure out much of a trajectory or like where to take it. There's a lot of different ways to monetize, but I never really found something that was like super right for me. And I had done a podcast before. And so I sort of always had it in the background of can we leverage this into a podcast? And then I think when they started talking about the TikTok ban is when I really started being like, okay, if you want to do something with this platform you've created, you got to get your shit together and you got to start doing something outside of just your fun little TikTok videos.
You also probably felt like you had to transfer your audience really quickly.
Yeah. And I was very hopeful that they wouldn't ban it. But I think just even like thinking about that being an option, whether it was going to happen or not, you know, that wasn't up to me. But I think it just got me thinking like, yeah, you can't just put everything on one platform. What are other ways you can like diversify, meet new audiences, you know? Would have never found this audience if I didn't explore TikTok. Maybe there's other platforms like Spotify or YouTube that I'm not really on as much. And if I start being on there, maybe I will like it as much or in a different way, you know? So I think all of that sort of helped. I also was reading The Artist's Way and doing The Artist's Way. I don't know if you've done that.
No, but I recently just wrote about The Artist's Way, like just like a little homage to it. You completed The Artist's Way.
I did. And I loved it.
I'm sure that's hard work.
It was really hard. I had two friends that we were like in a book group. What is
book club?
Book club. Thank you. I'm like book group is wrong. In a book club together, and we did it. And I think that accountability really helped because two out of the three of us had tried before but not finished it. And so then we decided to do it together, and that's when I was able to finish it. And yeah, I mean, not every week I was like, super in it. I will say for people who I tell to read it, which I think everyone who's creative, which I think everyone's creative should read it, is it's not a book, it's a course. And I think when you go into it knowing that, it's easier to finish it because like that is what it is. It's not just like passive, it's really interactive. But yeah, I shout out to The Artist's Way because that definitely helped me get to my podcast as well.
I feel like I know so many artists who have just not completed it. Like they get to the pages and like even just the pages are exhausting. Like in a page a day, like right when you wake up, right? They have to like I just don't think I didn't think of it in this way that it is a course. It is not a book.
Yeah.
And I was not prepared for that.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared the first time either. I failed like the first two times. I mean, failed's a strong word, but I didn't complete it the first two times. And then the third time I came back with a different mindset and I had like my friends doing it with me and then I was able to finish it.
Have you always felt like, because just, you know, generalizing, your degrees are in, so you have your law degree
It's a
And
master's in law, so
okay.
it's not like
Yeah.
law school in America. It's
Okay.
okay,
Well,
but
your
yeah.
master's in law. And what was your undergrad in?
Communication and international studies.
Okay. So with that, did you always feel like an artist and like a creative?
I think actually the opposite. Like I think I don't know what like teacher gave me an impression at a young age or who did this to me, but I always felt like really not creative or like not have that. Even though I always really like to like draw or sing in the shower, like these little things. And I think that was really fun about the artist way is that it really reminded me or showed me like, no, you are a really creative person. You just maybe, just because I'm not like, just because I don't want to be like a painter or do creativity in this way that I think is creative doesn't mean what I'm doing isn't creative. I think I didn't validate the ways I was creative or like, I didn't think society would validate them. So I sort of ignored that. And then when I did the artist way, it really helped me see like, oh no, you are a really creative person. You're just creative in this way. And I think that's also why I struggled with 9 to 5 jobs because like it is hard to do that when you're naturally very creative or like, color outside the lines kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
That's great. Yeah. And what you said about everybody being creative. Because I think so many people forget that, like,
yeah.
you're born creative. You're born
Yeah.
wanting to just like do cool shit and like, pick up dirt, throw it, and do creative things. And then, I mean, I don't think people are growing up this way now. I don't have too many people in my life who are Gen Zers, but like, I just feel like we grew up in a way that, you went to school, did your college degree, and it wasn't in the creative field. Like, I went to school for journalism and history. I had very few friends who went to school for the arts. And the ones who did, I didn't scoff, but I was confused. I was like, how the heck are you getting a degree in theater or film TV? I was like, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
I didn't even understand that people worked in those fields. I thought people just like magically worked on Hollywood one day.
Yeah, like by osmosis. And but it is kind of like that.
It is a little bit. A little bit.
Also, college degrees are so expensive that I think even at that young age, you go in being like, I need to get out of college knowing what I'm going to do and how to make money, which is so unrealistic for like a 21, 22-year-old.
Well, yeah. Well, even at 17, you're deciding what your degree is going to be in. So like, I can't imagine at 17 being like, this is what I want to do until I'm 65.
Yeah, totally.
What?
Unless you want to be like a doctor or like something really specific and you know that from a young age. I'm like, college it's hard to leave there. I feel like most people don't leave there being like, and this is what I'm doing forever and it sticks.
Okay, so I wanted to look this up before I sat down. I wanted to see a statistic about how many people actually use their college degrees because I bet it's incredibly low.
I think so as well. And I think that like,
I'm going to guess like 15%.
I think we'll see a shift in culture of people not going to college. I think our generation was probably the last one that really felt like you have to go to college to have a successful career. And I think I actually was reading a study about this. I think it was in New York Times. I don't remember where it was, but it was how like Gen Z is either wanting to basically be an influencer and like or like something online in the digital world, or do like typical trades like electrician, plumber, those sorts of like garbage man like or woman garbage person like things that like society just needs, and they kind of are going for like either trade school or like I'm not going to go to college and like do the digital route kind of thing, and like that's where they lie because they don't really see the point in like getting a degree. And I mean, fair enough. Also, like, not that I think anyone should do this, but I don't think anyone ever checked that I went to college. I put it on my resume. I don't think anyone ever verified that for any job I ever got. Maybe they did and I just didn't know. But I'm like, do you really think they're calling the dean of ASU to be like, who went here?
I've never thought about. I'm sure they're not. The only time I've ever like had to verify my college degree was when I was applying for a visa to another country. That's the only ever time I like really needed to show my document of a degree.
Wow.
So you could just lie.
Yeah. I mean, not that I think people should do that, but I do think I've often been like, what was the point of that? And
yeah. Well, I'm sure that they look at Gen Z, looks at us, and they see our generation's student loans, and they're like, why would I ever do that when I can do content or trades and all of these different avenues that they have available at their fingertips? Because they have, not that we didn't have the internet, but like they really have the internet.
They really have it. I do think too, we have in America, especially, such a shrinking middle class that a lot of people are either realizing like the American dream is a pyramid scheme. Like you're either in poverty or you're rich. And I think that's showing up in two ways where people are either like, I'm just going to like keep my head down and do my thing and try to survive. Like people are really in survival mode, especially people who don't have the means or the opportunities to explore as much. Like if you have kids young or whatever, depending on your life situation, doesn't have to be kids, but that's, kids are expensive. Or it's the opposite where they like feel really connected to like billionaires and they're like, I'm going to be the next, insert horrible billionaire here. And they think that they're closer to that because that is sort of the only way to like really thrive in the US is to be really rich, like, and thrive with, day-to-day things, getting good healthcare, getting good childcare, getting good food, things like that. That is not anything super ostentatious. It's just good quality stuff. You have to be really rich in the US to do that. We don't, and we have that shrinking middle class. So you also don't have that option of being upper middle class in the same way we did with our parents' generation. Our generation doesn't have that as much. So it's either like gig economy or trying to make it and trying to be the next influencer because that's like how you're more likely to succeed here. And you like need to have copious amounts of money to succeed here because we don't really have those supports.
Yeah. And I was thinking about what you said. I think about it all the time about not being accessible to different cultures sometimes. Like I think about people who are in the middle of the country, or even if you're, say, in Arizona or wherever, how in Europe you're surrounded by all these cultures all the time. You can just take a train and go hear another language. And while the US is very multicultural, it is still very divided. And a lot of people just aren't exposed to these different societal and cultural norms. And so it just kind of shifts your mindset, I think.
Totally. And also American media doesn't always paint certain cultures well. And so if you've never been anywhere, like I lived in the Middle East when I was in middle school and college. So I came here in 2009 while the war on terror was still thriving in the Middle East. And people in the US were like saying very Islamophobic or very anti-Arab, anti-Middle Eastern things. And I was like, as someone who lived there and like knew that wasn't true what they were saying, I was like, huh? Like, what are you talking about? And it took a while for me to realize like, oh my gosh, yeah, why would you think that Muslim people or Arab people or anything else, all you see is certain images of them on TV and that's all you know. So how would you know anything better? And I think if you don't travel or you don't get to see things yourself, like, and the only way you're learning is through media, like that's going to be the impression you make. And that's also what I really love about social media is because I do feel, especially TikTok, you're able to kind of like cross cultures or see things. Like I find myself learning about things that I don't think the normal media would show me, or learning from the perspective of someone who maybe wouldn't get that kind of platform in Hollywood or, on the news or wherever in mainstream media.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the stay-at-home feminist.
Yeah.
And that shift. And yeah, well, I'm going to ask you a ton of questions, but I also am curious, were you overwhelmed by, I don't know if you held it really closely at first, but I'm curious if you got a ton of questions from friends and family when you first made the shift to doing that, and again, to doing all of your content on TikTok. Because again, some of the things you say are very divisive by nature. It's politics. So if you're flooded with all of those questions, and how you feel about leaning into this new stepping stone for you.
I did hold it very close to my heart. I learned somewhere along the way in my life that your brain releases dopamine when you just talk about things you want to do. And that can contribute to you not actually finishing it because you're getting that dopamine from finishing it before finishing it. That makes sense. So someone told me, I don't know if that's true,
I've
but
heard
someone
that before.
Yeah,
I think
someone
it's very
told me
true.
that. And so since then, I'm like, I don't really like to talk about stuff other than like I keep it really close to my chest. So there's that. I do think one of the reasons I was really able to grow on TikTok is because no one I knew was on it when I joined. And I just started doing like whatever felt right, whatever was in the moment, not worried what anyone I knew would think because no one I knew was on it. And so I've tried to just keep that energy, even though now a lot of my friends are on TikTok and watching my stuff. And I'm like, don't look at me. But I've tried to keep that energy because that is what worked. And I think there is something that we see a lot with people that we have these parasocial relationships or that we look up to. It's like when people are really in their authenticity, you gravitate towards that. Like Doechii, I'm obsessed with her. We don't have a lot in common, but there's something that like, I'm screaming her lyrics as if they apply to me and they don't, but it's just like that authenticity and that voice, and people are drawn to that even if she's telling a story that doesn't really relate to me, and I think there's something about that. And so I try to sit in my authenticity, and that means having to pretend that no one is going to hear me, or if I do some of the stuff thinking like, what would my parents think? Like I might not do it. So, or what would this person think? I might not, or maybe I would do it, but maybe I wouldn't say it in a way that was authentic to me, or I would kind of like try to sugarcoat it or whatever. So I kept it close to my chest for that reason. But I do think that some of the things, although can be seen as radical, I do think there is a growing majority of people who it's like, say that part out loud and question it. Let's not let certain ideologies, especially toxic ones that are like misogyny, the way that people are so anti-woke culture, but in a way that is very racially insensitive or insensitive to the LGBTQ community or insensitive to women or whatever. I don't necessarily agree with cancel culture, but it's also like we have this moment of people being so anti-woke, and to me that feels like being anti just like taking care of each other, where it's like, let's just all be cool.
What a great way to put it.
Let's all just get along. And like, if this person wants to dress that way, let them. If this person wants to do that thing, you know what I mean?
Close your eyes if it bothers you
exactly.
so much.
Like,
who cares?
Yeah. Also, like when it's people that like live in small towns where they don't interact with people like that. Literally, it shouldn't matter to you. Trans people make up 1% of the population. Like they are not contributing to anything in your life, unless maybe you are like related to one. Then that's like your choice on the kind of relationship you want to have with them. They're not going to increase the price of gas. They're not going to increase the price of eggs. They're not going to, do anything that is going to affect your life in a negative way. Like, let's focus on other stuff. So I think for certain people, it's divisive. I hope to sort of talk about things in a way that make it less extreme or make it less. I think often people don't ask questions because they're like, I don't want to seem dumb, or like, I don't want to talk about this thing because I don't want people to get mad at me because they don't have the same opinion. And I hope that like my content and can sort of call people in to be like, here's how we can learn about it. Here's an easy way to talk about it. And also, you don't have to believe something just because you've always believed it. We are growing up. Every day you're getting older. You're able to learn new things. You're able to change your opinions, like myself included. I've said some shit and then look back on it 10 years later, or like 2 years later, a week later, and been like, oh, that was a crazy take, And so it's okay to learn new things. But I think, yeah, you as the audience need to put yourself out there, but you as the content creator needs to also be able to try and be palpable, but also not cater to everyone. So it's sort of a balancing act.
And like you said, I think we forget that we can change the way we feel about things.
Yeah.
I've found that way with even political takes where I'm like, I felt this way a year ago. And now I'm like, ooh, I don't feel that way anymore.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's scary for people to say out loud because we're so scared of being wrong all the time.
Definitely. And I think that people feel like they can't talk about things that are important to them, especially if it has like a political undertone, which let's be real, everything does these days. And they feel like they can't talk about these important things unless they're a professor in it. And I just hope that people can learn as much as they want to so that they can have the conversations they need to have with the people they love to feel safe and feel good,
Yeah. Oh, I do know. I love that. Okay, sweet.
I'm such a yapper. I feel like whenever I finish talking, I'm like, what did she ask me? Did I answer the question?
I'm obsessed with your answers. Oh my God, I keep getting the name of your podcast wrong. As it pertains to the stay-at-home feminist, otherwise known as SAF, how has your upbringing within different cultural and power dynamics between men and women shaped that podcast? And then where do you think the matriarchy and the patriarchy is going and where that shift is going to be in the coming years?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'll start with the sort of latter later question after the second question.
You had it, the latter.
The latter. So I feel like the shift, I'm hopeful that the shift to the matriarchy is well on its way. I think that was one of the reasons I was excited to do Stay at Home Feminist, because I do feel like there is this collective like lean in that women are having about discovering what feminism means to them and kind of accessing themselves as feminine and realizing how much society kind of can be very anti-feminine things, make fun of girls for liking what they like, or, I often say in my podcast, like, men aren't taught to be men, they're taught not to be women. Like, don't cry like a girl, don't throw like a girl, all of this stuff. And I think that a lot of females, but hopefully men too, are looking into introspectively kind of unlearning that. And I think as women, as we lean into our feminine and like feel that softness and that power and that part of us, we are also able to see the ways, or I'll speak from my own experience, I was able to see the ways that feminism, as I've seen it, has really created room at a table that was made for men. So it's like nice that we have a seat at the table. It's better to have a seat at the table than not a seat at all. But I think the next wave of feminism, I hope, is like let's take this table out back and like build something new, because us having a seat at the patriarchy gives us an equal opportunity to do things the way men have been doing, but it's not an equitable opportunity to do things the way that women can do it. And so just because I have the same job opportunities as a man, I have a different like life schedule as a woman than a man does, with kids, with not having kids, with like so many other factors. So I think just being able to have that same job opportunity doesn't really give me those same that same opportunities for power and growth that men do under the patriarchy. And I think a lot of women who are our age are seeing either their mothers worked or didn't work and like how that affected them. And then they're raising their own families now. And they're like, how am I going to be a full-time mom and a full-time cook for my kids and a full-time clean up the house? And I have to work full-time. Something's got to give. And I think our generation has been like one that really focuses on what's best for them and not what society says. And so people are sort of like trying to turn that on its head and do whatever works best for them, whether they have kids or not.
Yeah. This brings me into, obviously I was listening to your podcast earlier. You touched a tiny bit on Tradwives, and this whole term is brand new to me. As in, like, within the past few months, I learned what it was. At first, I thought it was like tradie wife. Because in Australia, there's tradies. And so I was like, oh, is it a wife of somebody who's married to a construction worker? And then I realized it's short for traditional wife. So I feel like you made a big distinction in your show between that and, I don't know, you touched on it. I just can't remember in what context. But I guess, can you touch on the tradwife culture, and especially that culture on Instagram and on TikTok, and what you think that's kind of doing to the overall wellness of women who might not have kids these days, and what that leaves an impression on for everybody?
Yeah, you know, it's tricky because I like my brand of feminism is very much, or like the feminism I hope to see in the world is that women can do whatever they want. And if that is being a traditional sort of housewife or whatever, if that's what makes you happy, go off. Like if you love to cook and you want to take care of your kids full time, like please do that without shame. I think there was like maybe a moment in time where if you were a stay-at-home mom, you were kind of looked at like, oh, you're just that, where it's like, no, those people should be valued. That's the like most important work, is bringing up the next generation, just like, you know, teachers and stuff like that, like women dominated fields that aren't necessarily given their credit. And I think specifically with the tradwife movement, there is this sort of conservative undertone, or this read between the lines dog whistle about it being towards more traditional values, very in line of make America great again, like great again for who kind of thing. And that I think is what I get concerned, because if you want to like be a stay-at-home wife or, you know, make sourdough bread from scratch, go off. And also let's analyze the ways we do stuff and who we're doing it for and where it comes from, because I do feel like a lot of the tradwife content is sort of, again, dog whistling of like, the women should be at home. You are a better woman if you stay at home. And I don't think that's true. I think feminism should be do what you want. And if that is staying at home, great. If that is working, great. If it's finding something 50-50, great. But I think this call back to traditional values has a lot of conservative undertones of women should be giving birth and in the home and this and that. And I think anytime it's like women should do this, I don't like it. And even if it's something that is empowering to women, I don't like it. And I think that's where it gets tricky with the tradwife movement, because I'm like, I support women's rights and I support women's wrongs, like go do you. But I get concerned of the impression we're giving to especially younger women on social media, or younger girls on social media seeing this stuff and like glamorizing being a stay-at-home mom. Not that that isn't a powerful thing. And I have friends who are stay-at-home moms and they love it. So I'm not trying to knock that. But again, it's like something particular with the tradwife movement. It's not just about being a stay-at-home mom. It's like traditional values. And that has this sort of undertone of like, and I'm doing this all to serve men. And I think that is the part that I'm like, careful.
Yeah. Causes
careful,
a little
guys.
pause.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's just not about shaming each other.
Yeah.
It's just lifting, post how you made crayons from scratch, or post how you made the sourdough, but don't make anybody feel bad that that's not where their skill lies.
Yeah.
You know?
And you're not a bad mom if you don't make sourdough from scratch. You're not a bad woman if you don't want to do that. Like, you know, and I think that's sort of the the joy of feminism is do what you want, you know?
And you're as much as a woman if you don't want to have kids.
Exactly.
And you don't want to get married. It doesn't make you
Exactly.
any less of a woman.
Exactly.
And I think that's getting lost.
Yeah.
Well, it's getting lost in some chats, getting
Lost in
elevated
some algorithms, some parts of the internet for sure. And I think that's like an interesting straddle that a lot of like women our age are in right now, where it's like, how, if we don't want to be this super girl boss, powerful feminist, and I don't want to be a trad wife, like what's left for me and how do I carve out my own path in that? And I think a lot of women feel like they have to be either or. They have to be a trad wife or they have to be like a CEO of corporate world, you know? And a lot of us that hat doesn't make sense for a lot of us to wear or to choose in between. So I hope that women can feel empowered of like finding out what works best for them. As you said, like maybe you don't want to have kids. Maybe you don't want a husband. There are a lot of studies that say unmarried women without kids live way longer and way happier lives than married women with kids. So I will say that. So yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a super convoluted question, so bear with me as I ask it. I might ask it twice.
Okay.
Okay, so my first question will be, how did you decide to plant roots after living so many different places? Because you've also lived all over the U.S. And then my second part to that question that we can come back to is I think you were there when Cole was kind of mentioning, and again, we don't have to talk about Cole, but he was mentioning how he thinks home investments are, oh my God, I don't want to misquote him, a lie of an investment. How I think in America, we put so much oomph into like, you have to buy a home, you have to buy property, you have to have your feet planted somewhere, and that's the investment. And I feel like he was saying something like, the investment in it is that you feel grounded. It's not necessarily a great money investment.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to touch on those.
Yeah, I think me and my husband wanting to like plant our feet somewhere was very not my norm, but I think we wanted to buy a house and we have connections to where we wanted to live and like family there. So it sort of made sense for us in our chapter, but we didn't buy a house for a long time and we were very selective about buying it because he always said buying a house isn't an investment. And I think that is sort of the misconception that people think that buying a house is better than renting because you own it. But the way that mortgages work, like you don't own the house, the bank owns it. And so I think a lot of people rush to that sort of white picket fence lifestyle, rush to get married, rush to have kids, rush to buy a house, or like because they got married, they feel like they have to buy a house. Again, it's like these societal pressure dominoes that like once you do this, you got to do that. And I think with buying a house, it's like, if you want to buy a house, go off, but it is not an investment unless you are like turning them into Airbnbs or podcast spaces or whatever, you know, unless you treat it as a business, which then you got to like make sure your HOA or whatever is okay with that. And it's a whole other thing. And so I think that's one thing that I wish more people knew about sort of that. I don't want to call it the rat race because I feel like the rat race is associated with corporate world, but this is like the heteronormative rat race of like get married, have kids, buy a house. And I think there's a lot of that people don't learn about until they're buying the house. And by then you're already committed basically, and people don't sort of turn around and take that back. And it's not a good investment. It's not going to make you money. You're going to probably lose money if you buy a house. And that's okay. If like, you want to buy a house, do it, but don't do it because you think it's going to be more lucrative to you than renting, because that is normally not the case. But yeah, I definitely like to travel, but I do think I spent a lot of my life like flying by the seat of my pants. And maybe if I didn't know the answer for something, I'm like, I'll just move here. That will fix it. And the older I got, I'm like, that's not going to solve some of the problems. Just moving to a new place isn't going to solve some of the problems you have. So like, you got to figure that out no matter where you are. And that has made me more comfortable with being rooted. But I mean, I'm still very open to like moving in the 5 years.
Yeah.
It's just like, we'll see how we're feeling then and play it by ear. But, you know, the world is a big, beautiful place. And I want to explore it, whether that's, okay, I live here and I'm more settled. So that means it's easier to go on more trips. I used to live in Los Angeles and Miami. So living here, it's like a lot more affordable. And so it makes sense to go on more trips. Where when I was living in LA and I was also like a lot broker because I was just like younger and life was different then. Like I wasn't able to travel that much. So I think it just depends on your phase of life and like what makes sense for for you. But yeah, I can't see myself forever, like anywhere, just because of how I've been raised. And maybe that will change, but maybe never.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
2 questions to that. How do you stay, well, having moved every 5 years, how do you stay connected to people that you met maybe like 15 years ago who are in a different location? And then with that, you don't answer that first. I forgot the other one.
I think that's a good question. I think it really depends on the friend. I think one thing I've learned is it's okay to have phases of friendships. And just because my friends aren't reaching out or I'm not reaching out, like doesn't mean I don't love them and I'm not thinking of them. Different friends are good at different things. Like some of my friends are really good at keeping up with voice notes. And then I have other friends who are horrible at voice notes. I know if I send them 3, they're not going to listen to them for a month, but then they'll get back to me in a month or 2 months or whatever, you know? So I think it depends on the friend. And I think the best for me is when we can make efforts to see each other, which can be hard because people are like so busy and it's expensive to travel and like all of the reasons. But I think like trying to make those efforts to see each other every year, every couple of years, even every 5 years for my friends who are like are in for farther away places, like I feel like that's the best way for me personally to reconnect because it's just so much easier. And then I feel like once I see a friend, we'll be better at talking like long distance and then it sort of phases out. But then we see each other 2 years later and it's good. But I think the number one thing is just if you miss your friend, call them. You know, I think a lot of people are like, I'm so lonely, no one calls me. And it's like, okay, you can pick up the phone too. And also, just because I'm not talking to my friend every day and I used to see them every day doesn't mean we're not as close. There's just ebbs and flows of friendship. And that's not a negative thing. That's just like it just is what it is.
Yeah. And you mentioned how moving all the time isn't going to solve your problems.
Yeah.
Did you
Did you feel personally attacked by that one?
A little bit. Only because like I feel like when where was I moving to? It might have been like Australia. I feel like someone was like, "Oh, are you running from something?" And I was like, "What?" I was deeply offended. And I think that's also when I was getting berated with questions when I was first moving, just like question after question, like, "Oh, why are you moving? What are you going to do for work? Where are you going to live?" I was so flustered and I felt like I took my anger out on people when they would ask me questions. I was just like, I don't know. And that's when my therapist was like, oh, well, you're a little bit outside the bell curve, blah, 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 blah. So did you find that when you were moving, did it feel like you were kind of delaying a problem that you were running from?
I think not at the time, but I think looking back, I can see how maybe that was part of it. But I also think because I moved so much growing up that it just felt really natural. And I think I had a really big culture shock when I moved to America and I wasn't expecting it because like I'm American, but I hadn't ever lived here. And so I think after college, I was like, I gotta go. I gotta go find my international nomadic people and explore. And I think maybe some people would look at that and be like, wow, you like wasted so much time doing that. But like I got to see places and I got to meet people and I got to like figure out myself. And so it was all well worth it for me. Really outside of the box, really untraditional. But like, I think I learned a lot of lessons and got to know myself in ways that I wouldn't if I just like moved to Cincinnati and got a corporate job. No shade to Cincinnati, but
yeah. Who the heck told you that that was a waste of time?
I think people it was similar to you, or maybe that's not what they said, but maybe because I was insecure, that's how I heard it, where it's like, what are you going to do? How is that going to be a career? Oh, you're just going to work on a hotel? Do you want to work in the hotel industry? Well, then why are you working in a hotel? And I'm like, because that's the only job I can get here. Leave me alone. I don't know what I want to do tomorrow. I don't have it figured out. And so I think for me, maybe it felt that way and maybe they were just curious or maybe they were having some undertones.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I think, yeah, it can feel very daunting when people are like asking you a bunch of stuff and you're doing something that's outside of the norm and you're like, no, that's the point is I don't have my shit together. So just like, let me go get it together. Like I don't have it together now. I need to go there and see if I can get it together there. And if not, we'll figure it out. Like asking so many questions. And I think people who are on that more traditional path might see that as like, not a waste of time, but like, why would you do that? Why would you spend all that money? Why would you spend all that time? Why would you spend all that effort making new friends or uprooting your life or whatever? Because that's not what they want. They can't really get the value.
I think it scares a lot of people and they can't fathom not having like a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. Yeah. So when they come across somebody who, like if you ask me, like I don't have it figured out. A lot of us don't have it figured out, but I'll say it.
Yeah.
And so when they come across somebody who is uprooting their life and going somewhere new or uprooting their career into something that's not quote unquote normal, they just can't even conceptualize it. They're like, how on earth would you do that? Why would you do that? Isn't that going to be a waste of time? Mm-hmm. Aren't you like delaying things, and it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
slow down.
Yeah. I will say I do think there's like a bit of projection there too, where people like if they would be too scared to do it and you're doing that scary thing, like, they maybe villainize it or reject it or like don't even try to understand it. And we see that with like lifestyle choices like traveling. We're seeing that now in the US with like the LGBTQ community, like they're being villainized for no reason. We see that a lot. I was telling you the other day, like I was sober for a month. And I ended up doing it for a few months because I liked being sober so much. Just I did like a dry June and it just kept going. And I saw some people sort of like rubbed the wrong way by it. And I'm like, oh, I feel like you're projecting here because why should me not drinking bother you at all? Like most people don't care. And I think sober curiousness is like it's more normal to not drink at functions than it was a while ago. But I think, yeah, no matter what you do, people are going to have their opinions. And I think my favorite kind of advice to go back to is I don't take advice from people that are in places that I don't want to be. Bars.
Wait, what'd you say, bars?
Bars.
Like you got that from a bar?
No, like that's what you say when you like drop a bar. Like I don't know how to explain this to you. We can cut it out.
I'm learning so many things. Is that me showing my like? Is that a Gen Z thing?
I
You're
don't
not Gen
know.
Z,
This
but-
is something my husband says to me. So as I said it, I was like, I think this is like a rap reference because he really likes rap. Where it's like you drop a bar, but now that I'm like having to explain it, I'm like, is this just a weird thing we say to each other? Is this a real thing?
And I looked at you like, what? Okay. That was I've learned a lot of new things. I think that's like the best new thing I've learned today. I'm gonna have to use that at some point on someone, just be like bars.
Bars.
That's like when I first heard the saying, that slaps. I hated that saying. And this was me projecting. I hated that saying so much. And it's funny because now I use that saying and I'm like way behind the times. I'm like, oh, that slaps.
It catches on and then it gets stuck in your vernacular. And then...
Yeah. When you spend so much time hating on something, that's so wicked. Because like I would go to Cape Cod with my friend. She's from Massachusetts. And they would say, I would count how many times they would say wicked in a conversation. And it would bother me so much. But then I found I spent so much time hating on that thing that now I use the word now. It was just me projecting something.
Yeah.
So there you go.
It's so funny how that happens.
It does. It like seeps into you. Okay. So I'll probably wrap this up a little soon. So how do you define success when you aren't following a clear roadmap? What does success look like to you when you're kind of living in the unknown?
That's a good question. I think that's probably a two-pronged answer depending on the day. I think success more broadly for me is like, are you happy and fulfilled and grateful most days? You know, it doesn't have to be every day. Some days fucking suck. But like most days, do you feel good about yourself? And I think the other part of success, what was I going to say? I lost it. Yeah, I don't know what I was going to say.
That's great.
Lost that. But yeah, I think, do you feel happy? You know, more days than not.
Yeah. Oh. So what advice would you give to somebody who is looking to either move abroad, make a career shift, just do something that's not quote unquote normal for them or something that might surprise their friends and family? What advice would you give them to just go?
Yeah, I think definitely don't take advice from people who are in places you don't want to be. Everyone's going to have an opinion. You don't have to listen to it. But I think also failure is okay. Let's normalize failure. I like to think of failure as a stepping stone, and I haven't always felt that way. And it was like a journey to sort of reframe that for myself. But I would really want to empower people to think of failure as a stepping stone because failure, like I think sometimes it can feel like if you fail, that means like you're the worst person in the world and you're so stupid, da 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 da. But it's okay, would you rather have regrets and not try? Like, so what if you start this business and it fails, or you move to this place and it blows up in your face, or you date this person and it doesn't work out and that's not your future spouse? Okay, so you lived. It's all good for the plot. It's just life. Don't take it that seriously. I mean, there are moments you need to take seriously, but you don't need to put that pressure on yourself. And failure is a stepping stone to success, especially if you're willing to embrace the moment of whether it's like a peak or a valley and learn from the lessons along the way.
Ooh, embracing the valleys. That's a hard one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard when you're on a peak and you're like, I know a valley is coming. I don't know when. And then you're in the valley and you're like, oh, this is the valley. This is
Yeah.
the desert.
Totally.
And you have to just embrace it.
Yeah, and it's hard when you're in it because sometimes it feels like this is going to last forever. And it's like once you go through enough peaks and valleys, though, I do feel like you start to realize like that nothing lasts forever. The good times or the bad times, like nothing lasts forever. So just like hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on, you'll be fine.
Okay, last question. What is a song that you have on repeat right now that you play 10 times in a row and you don't get sick of it?
Oh, anything Doechii. I think I don't know the name of the song, but when the one that she's like, put the motherfucking money in my motherfucking hands. I'm a Gucci and a Bonix and a motherfucking bands. That one.
That one, perfect.
That one.
I'm going to listen to it on the way home.
Wake up. I'm a horrible singer, but you guys will know what I'm trying to say.
You sound great to me. I love it.
Yeah, anything Doechii. Doechii's the moment right now. On
Absolutely.
repeat.
Just her style. I'm like, yes.
Yeah,
All of
it's
it.
just so much fun. It's just so much fun. I like listening to her when I'm getting ready, when I'm at the gym, when I'm just trying to chill and have a good time. Like any moment in life, it makes sense to play Doechii.
She's just there in the corner. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This was awesome, and I've learned a lot.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Awesome.